The Middle Ages contrasted with the modern age in three ways. The day was 12 hours long, light and dark. The universe was also divided into two parts, light and dark, and accordingly each half has its own king. The light one has the Lord, and the dark one has Satan. So in 1632, rumors spread in the town of Lowden that the nuns of the convent had become possessed by the servants of the Dark King. We are talking about one of the darkest mysteries of 17th century France. Let's start off with the reality that the recent plague epidemic has reduced Lowden's population by 25%. This is Flip Side of History, and today's topic of this episode is mysterious madness during the Middle Ages. Keep watching. What kind of town is it? The town of Lowden is located in the west of France, and today it has a population of less than 7,000 individuals. But 400 years ago, it was a really large agglomeration, 2 or 3 times larger than it is nowadays. It served as a fortress for the Protestants and for the Huguenots who appeared after the beginning of the Reformation. Sadly though, the sieges, looting, and massacres that took place during the religious confrontations severely destroyed the town. Additionally, in order to avoid the divine punishment, the inhabitants grabbed the rosary, turned to heaven and began to pray without stopping. They were ready to smash their foreheads. And the miracle indeed took place. Then the plague really receded. Everyone was sure that the prayers had stopped the demonic occurrence. When the plague broke out, witches and sorcerers were almost always poisoned. This was because people could not find the true cause of the disease and tried to blame everyone, even the devil himself. We can see that there has always been a scapegoat. Firstly, the local nuns just couldn't sleep. One day, on the night of September 21st, 1632, in the convent of Ursula in Lowden, one of the sisters, Jeanne d'Ange, could not fall asleep. It seemed to her that someone just looked at her from a dark corner, and indeed a disgusting feeling, which everyone knows, especially during childhood. But in the Middle Ages, such feelings were intensified 100-fold. The psychology of people of that time should always be taken into account when studying the sources of that era. So poor Jeanne woke up the two sisters, and all three looked in the direction Jeanne was pointing. There seemed to be something there. Someone, like a figure lurking in the shadows. The sisters began to pray, but the mysterious presence did not disappear no matter what. On the contrary, it began to fill the whole space, becoming just bigger and bigger. Suddenly, however, it disappeared. The sisters later claimed it was the ghost of the deceased pastor. We are talking now about the pastor Mousson. But what was it? Omen, night vision, or something outright demonic? No one knew the answer to that question, and the unknown was truly frightening. 2 days after the sisters saw the shadow, they fell ill. That is, in the evening they began to have severe convulsions. There were no symptoms such as fever or cough. Panic seized the convent, and the people, seeing a handful of nuns, began to fear a fate worse than even epidemic. Insanity became widespread. 15 days later, the sisters were joined in the infirmary by additional 17 nuns who saw a black ball suddenly fly into the lunchroom, and they began to convulse. At the moment of enlightenment, people started talking about demons. They were existing but self-destructed, as in one movie. Otherwise, the behavior of the young ladies in the darkness was very similar. They ruined their faces with terrible convulsions. Some of them escaped from the infirmary and began to walk naked on the roof. They climbed trees, shouted crazy speeches about the devil, they blasphemed. And one witness even said that the sisters had left the convent, and then, screaming loudly, they chased after the civilians of Lowden. No wonder people thought that women were obsessed with Lucifer. The authorities immediately responded to the situation by offering a single cure. That is, exorcism. At first, exorcisms were carried out only within the walls of the monastery, that is, on the Pockenstrasse street. But later on, when the obsession began to affect the population, the event was also held in a more public location in the main town square. This entertainment began to attract onlookers. Tourists even flocked to the City of Madness. About 3,000 spectators gathered to watch the bizarre spectacle of screaming, twisting people. People came from all over the country and even from the neighboring countries. All of it for the sake of taking a look at this mesmerizing and, at the same time, abominable show. Hundreds of onlookers came to see it with their own eyes. Most exorcism sessions involved verbal arguments with the alleged demon, but the priests also examined the victims' bodies in detail, a super excuse to undress the girl, and for demon marks, clear signs of possession, but didn't find any. A month passed, and it became pretty clear to everyone that neither exorcism nor prayer could cure this strange ailment, and the number of obsessed, as visitors from other parts of Europe have noticed, is only increasing. What's then? And consequently, the authorities decided to find and punish the culprits in order not only to scare people, but also to show their authoritarian activity. They had to find the guilty, urgently. Where are the guilty ones found? In October, Jeanne de Ange, the sister who first saw the devil, managed to talk about why that occurred. So what? She blamed the city priest Urbain Grandier and named him as the one who brought this terrible demonic obsession to the monastery. As if on cue, the other sisters also began to blame Grandier. They said that this guy spoke obscenities to them, lusted after them, touched them in various places or here and there, and when they refused, put demons inside of them. By some means, everything came out smoothly based on their confessions. A few months earlier, the aforementioned Grandier had refused to become the priest of the community. Of course, the peasant denied any involvement in the possession. That's because Urbain was handsome and had a loud reputation for being a womanizer. But none of that mattered. He became undesirable for another reason. A few years earlier, he had published a pamphlet in which he criticized Richelieu and defended the Protestants, who constituted back then the majority of the city of 14,000 people, a fairly large center for that time. Urbain was disliked by the royal family, and the Red Cardinal considered him the main opposer in the city. In addition, Urbain opposed the destruction of the city walls. At that time, we once again repeat, Lowden was also a fortress, that is, the townspeople could stand up for themselves. In short, the trouble around Grandier was circling even closer, and there was nowhere to wait for support. He was jailed. Was there a pact with Beelzebub, a name for the devil? The trial continued throughout the year 1633. Magistrates, diplomats, clergy, and a myriad of other interested persons were involved. Of greatest interest was one document seized from Grandier's home, which, according to the prosecution, was a diabolical paper signed by the defendant himself. It was assumed that this document, written in Latin, had Grandier's signature as well, in fact, a few demons. It served as the only material evidence against the accused individual. Such testimony seemed convincing enough for the era, and the church decided to subject the priest to so-called interrogation, meaning the use of torture. And despite many months of torment, Urbain did not confess that he had made a pact with Satan. He remained faithful to only God. Punishment. However, it didn't matter anymore. He was still declared guilty of the use of magic, sorcery, and dark powers, and ordered to be burned at the stake in mid-August 1634. Urbain Grandier died in front of an audience of 6,000, with the crucifix in his hands. Even more so, the crowd begged for clemency, but it didn't help nonetheless. By the way, the square where the execution took place is now called Place Urbain Grandier, in honor of the main character of the episode, a victim of injustice. But let's get back to where we began, or rather, to individuals with whom it all began to be talked about. What about nuns? Another curious fact. Just a month after these events, the minister who lit the fire fell into dementia. The burning of Urbain Grandier in 1634 may seem like the end of this story, but the nuns didn't seem to notice. Their incomprehensible obsession continued, and continued for another 3 years. On a smaller scale though, it wasn't until 1637 that the sisters miraculously got rid of their demons. How did this happen? It's unknown. Who was credited? The abbess of the convent, who later became a celebrity and received an aura of sanctity. In this business where religion is intimately intertwined with politics, psychology, and the supernatural, it is extremely difficult to separate truth from falsehood. Was in essence obsession a manifestation of collective hysteria, similar to medieval dance manias, or was it all a skillfully staged performance? Lamentably, we can only guess and nothing more. Thank you for watching this episode. We truly hope that you loved this one. Do not hesitate to subscribe and also leave a like. And for now, we see you later.